Now, the BuckeyeXtra podcast with Joey Kaufman and Rob Oller from the Columbus Dispatch.
Hey folks, it's Joey Kaufman. I'm joined by Rob Oller. It's the latest edition of the BuckeyeXtra football podcast. It's almost 11 a.m. on Thursday, January 15th, and in this era of the transfer portal, which remains open for another day, and players can commit after that. There's certainly the possibility that there will be more news and events after the time we record this podcast, and it gets into your podcast feed. So I wanted to time stamp it. But as of this point in time, we're going to try to break down Ohio State's early portal haul. They've lost a fair number of players, almost 30 scholarship players, 29 by my count, and they've signed 12 this week. So it's been a sort of a flurry of movement for the Buccaneers.
Is there anybody left on this roster?
Jeremiah Smith,
yes,
number 4.
Julian Sand, Jeremiah Smith,
Bo Jackson, Brandon Ennis, Austin Saraville, Carson Insman. You got a few pieces there from your
Luke Montgomery.
Yeah. So there are some returning Buckeyes, but yeah, they've lost quite a bit to the transfer portal. This is the most they've ever lost. It's not drastically different than 2 years ago. I think what's different this year is that there is only one portal window. So instead of stuff being staggered 4 months apart, where there's a winter window in December and then a spring window in April after spring practice, it's all happening over 2 weeks in January. And so it's a lot more coming at you fast. 2 years ago, they did lose 25 players across both portal windows. So this is a little more than that. But not too outside of the norm of recent years.
This may have been the case 2 years ago, but really kind of what jumps out this time, other than, as you said, the one portal is, recruiting has become such this cottage industry, 4-star, 5-star, and they lost the 25 class. They've lost 8 out of 26 guys already. The 24 class, 11 of 22 have left already. So it just feels like these guys who are like can't miss dudes coming in with great high potential, they've left, and you can name some of them.
Quincy Porter is
Quincy Porter, Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. So did Mylan Graham, who was part of the 24 class. Fahim Delane, a safety who was part of the 25 class, who was a top 100 guy, entered the portal. Aaron Scott, who was part of the 24 class, the top-ranked recruit in Ohio, he entered the portal as well. Bryce West did too. He was another highly ranked guy from the 24 class. That 24 class is now lost 11 out of the 22 guys they signed. That includes Aaron Nolan, who went to the portal last year. So,
and these names are familiar to people.
Yeah,
these aren't guys that were 2-star, and they aren't guys that were from 5 years ago. This is recent. And so that's kind of the shock to the system. I've had several people come up to me, what's going on? Are we, as they say, the fans, are we in trouble? Is there a problem? I said, this is happening everywhere, honestly.
Yeah, you look at the top guys they signed, who were freshmen last year. It was Tavian St. Clair. Okay, he's gonna be the backup this year. Devin Sanchez. Okay, he was rotating in as one of the corners as a freshman. Zion Grady was playing snaps. Riley Pettijohn was playing snaps. If you are not immediately playing, it seems like it's hard to keep those guys because Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham were not playing very much at all down the stretch, and part of that was injuries. Quincy Porter was unavailable for a lot of the second half of the season, which I think was unfortunate for him because with Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith so in and out in November, it was a chance for one of those guys to really emerge, and it didn't happen. So guys are leaving faster because you've seen a third of the freshman class leave after a year. and you've seen half of the sophomore class leave after 2 years. I think probably the striking thing, and some of them are toward the higher end of the class rankings. They came in with a pretty high recruiting pedigree, so you're not seeing a 4 or 5 star just sitting on the bench for 2 years without maybe assurances that they're going to start in year three.
Right. And presumably you're paying those guys to come in with
Right,
NIL.
and that's the new wrinkle in this cycle is this is the first year that schools can directly play players as part of the antitrust case settlement that went down last summer, where there's now a cap that schools can pay athletes. Ohio State's paying $18 million to 4 sports this year. Most of that is going to football, but it's happening across the country where other Big Ten schools are paying millions of dollars to their athletes. So there's just more money involved this time around. Before NIL has existed, third party deals have existed in the past couple cycles, but now there's tens of millions of more dollars that can be exchanged with players, and somebody could look to try to find a better situation.
Yeah. I mean, from Ohio State standpoint, this gets into we won't do a too deep a dive on this, but the whole idea of productivity versus potential, like recruiting high school players versus taking guys from the portal. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to recruit, like we talked about, these 5 star guys who sit and you pay them, you're paying them something to come here. Let's not be naive. And then they leave. So you have to kind of think, well, is that money well spent? When we can get guys, when we don't really know how well they'll do on the field versus the product. That's the potential side. The productivity side is you're taking guys who have been starters elsewhere, or if not starters, well, most of them were starters, honestly, I think. And so you're bringing them in and you know what they can do. And yeah, you're paying them to come in, but you know what you have. I think it's like NFL. This is probably the future, we'll see, of the sport. And the genie's out of the bottle. I had a big talk last night with some guys. Like, the genie's out of the bottle here. I mean, unless Congress steps in and puts some guardrails in place, I don't know how they get their arms around this totally. But that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, you now have to make decisions almost about your depth chart now in terms of how you're going to allocate money, because if you're going to be allocating a budget that the schools can now pay players, you don't want to make bad bets. You want to put your money toward a player you expect is going to be able to start. I think it's why Ohio State's probably dipped into the portal a little more in this cycle, is because you want to be able to have some, I think, more assurances that you're getting somebody who has proven production and could start for you right away if you have all these holes to replace on defense. I mean, I think what maybe, like, not to, we don't know we don't have a great understanding of the financial picture. But if you just look at the depth chart, you take that aside, you have Bryce West, who was the backup nickel to Lorenzo Styles Jr. last year. That's now a job that is a starting job. And in previous years, Bryce West would come back and compete for that job. But the question is, do you pay top dollar, starting dollar for him to come back and be your nickel? Or do you go to the transfer portal and look to add a safety who could fill that spot? They've added 2 safeties in Terry Moore and Earl Little Jr. Both of them were second team all ACC selections at Duke and Florida State. They've have starting experience, and I think that becomes a little more coveted for Ohio State as you reload the roster, maybe, than in the past where you're banking on somebody to merge. But the other side of the coin is you're having to gamble either way, because Arvell Reese this past year had never been a starter until he has this breakout year. So your evaluations have to be really on point, because there's now money behind it. So either you're evaluating your backups all throughout last year, and I feel this guy, he has no starting experience, but he's ready to come on and emerge, and we're going to pay starting dollar for him, expecting he's going to start. Or you have to trust I'm going to open this other door, the transfer portal, and bring in somebody with starting experience. They've had some good hit rates in the past. I think last year you saw times where they didn't. They brought in Ethan Oniawa from Rice to be a potential starting tackle, and that never materialized. They moved him to guard, and even with all their uh, deficiencies on the interior of the offensive line last year, he never was an option for them. And so you had a big transfer portal pickup just sitting on your bench late in the season. So I think that to me is probably the most striking thing is if you're going to go to the portal and address needs, you better be sure you're right. And if you're going to go to your backups and put them in a position to start, you better be right there too.
Yeah. That raises the question specific to Ohio State is uh, their GM, for lack of a better term. I don't know if they're technically calling Mark Pantoni a GM, but one
Dude,
advantage,
that title, man.
yeah, one advantage seemingly that Ohio State's had for the last decade is high school recruiting. They're always up there, top five. Pantoni is sort of a guru, brilliant with bringing these guys, these high school kids in, and that's what he's known. And that's been an advantage for Ohio State. What we don't know is how the portal is going to go, bringing guys in. Is Pantoni and his staff as good at reading guys from other schools as he is high school talent, like the relationship side? It doesn't feel like with the transfer portal, you're not building 2 or 3 years of relationship with these kids. You start recruiting a guy freshman, sophomore year, and maybe he comes, maybe he doesn't, but it's more than likely he does. And now this portal stuff is quick. And not only that, is we don't know exactly like the money allocation. What's the line for Ohio State? Is Ohio State willing to pay a transfer guy coming in, like these two Alabama linemen, right? Or linebacker and lineman. They're coming. Is Ohio State willing to pay those guys as much as say a Texas Tech would or an Oregon would? We don't know that. And so you lose a little advantage. This has become a money deal as much as anything now. Yeah, Ohio State's still a brand. Players want to come here. They want to, especially offensively and quarterbacks and skill, they still want to come to Ohio State because it's right up there, top three, top five. But that high school recruiting, if that diminishes the importance of that, and your strength is high school recruiting, I'm just curious how this plays out with Ohio State.
Yeah, I remember I think it was in 22 when Ohio State and Georgia were meeting in the semifinals that season. I didn't end up doing this story, but I thought about doing it and it didn't end up materializing. But neither Georgia nor Ohio State really had any transfers starting that year. And now that almost feels like a relic of the sport, where you wouldn't see that now because you have to live in the portal to some degree. And I don't think high school recruiting has totally waned in significance because still that's how they got Jeremiah Smith. It's how they got Devin Sanchez, who's probably going to start next year. It's how they got Bo Jackson. And you're still going to find impact players out of high school. And the plus side for you is they got a lot of years of eligibility to play for you. I mean, you're going to get Ohio State's going to have 3 years of Jeremiah Smith. And
More tread on the tire too.
yeah, I mean, you just get
Right.
more. If you hit on those guys, you get more time with them. It's like kind of signing them to longer term contracts. Although everyone really in this sport is on a year to year contract, but you have the potential to have multiple years. So the upside is high from the high school level still, I think.
It's still going to be important. It's just more that it's the advantage. If it's not as important, what does that mean? What's that look like? I mean, Ohio State's going to be fine. It's just I don't think anyone really knows. And now it's your GM. Like how sharp is your GM? I mean, that's kind of what you're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be interested to see the way high school recruiting goes. Ohio State's bringing in a pretty big class this year in 26. They signed 28 guys or so, and they went after and tried to lock in some big name guys. I mean, Chris Henry Jr. was somebody they had to fight for till the end, obviously. And there's been one thought, it's like maybe you sign a smaller high school class this day and age because you're not gonna be able to keep everybody. On the flip side, if you sign a bigger class, you can kind of withstand the attrition a little more. If you make the bet, we're going to sign a smaller class and go to the portal, okay, you sign 20 guys, well, what if half of those leave? Then you're only left with 10. If you sign 30 guys and half of them leave, you're left with 15 or so. So I don't, it'll be interesting to see the way that it sort of unfolds in future years, but there'll certainly be a needle to thread for Ohio State.
Yeah, absolutely. Who are the biggest names they lost, would you say, and who's the most important pickups through the portal?
I think Quincy Porter was a big name because you felt like he could maybe start opposite Jeremiah Smith next year, but it depends how you feel about Chris Henry Jr. as well. I think probably Aaron Scott, Fahim Delane, um, those guys in the back end, I think probably were two of the bigger names they lost. Tiger Shabola was the most experienced departure, 28 career starts, but I don't think there was any guarantee that he was going to keep that right guard spot. He would have been in the competition, and they return everybody else on the offensive line and have some guys on the second string like Ian Moore and Joshua Padilla, I think, who could push to start next year. So that's probably less of a significant loss. I think to me, it's less about like they lost this one particular guy. It's more the volume. Probably you would, I think, like to have a little better depth at some spots and maybe kept more of them than they did ultimately lose.
Yeah. One thing we haven't talked about, I don't know if this is over or underplayed, is you are bringing guys in and you don't who have to fit into the quote culture and buy into the brotherhood. Now, assume that they have done their due diligence and know that these guys will be a good culture fit, but you never know. And what you are losing is guys who have been in the system, who understand the mat drills in the winter and understand how things are done. So, how quickly can guys get up to speed? They've done a pretty good job of integrating guys in the past. I mean, it was, I mean, everybody from Sand to Downs to, that
They
doesn't seem to have been a problem, but I mean, it's a concern.
Yeah, well, I think honestly, you look at the portal additions they've made over the years. I think a lot of them have helped enhance Ohio State's culture. I mean, Ryan Day
You're
also
right.
spoke glowingly in recent years, especially this past year. I think um, as far as David Sigbanowson's impact on the cornerback room and kind of the edge he added there, I think in 24 that portal class was significant for the culture in terms of guys like Seth McLaughlin on the offensive line, Caleb Downs on defense, then sort of the fiery Will Howard. That was a really important group for the culture. I think they've managed to, I think, largely do well in that area where it feels like that hasn't totally
Yeah,
dragged them down. I think ultimately, even though they've made portal additions, they've tended to be sort of um, guys who have just sort of complemented the roster, where the core of it has been intact through high school recruiting. And now the percentage will kind of lean a little more toward the portal, but it's still they've brought in 12 guys. It's a little more than in past years, but it's not a drastic change. And that number 12 will probably be higher ultimately. So it is going to be more. They've threaded it fine from a culture's perspective in the past, but it's
right.
I think something to it's always worth monitoring.
All right. So who is the most important pickup? I would say the kicker,
Well,
which
they did
now
it.
they didn't lose. They didn't, right? They lost. Well, I mean, Jaden Fielding, uh,
Jaden Feeling exhausted
is
his eligibility, and then
he's
Jackson Kerrville, who was the backup, a walk-on who came over from Ball State, he re-entered the portal and transferred to Tulane. So after the first week the portal was open, Ohio State did not have a kicker on the roster,
yeah,
and they added one with Connor Hawkins from Baylor, who's probably probably know probably about it, who I think should be an upgrade for them. Made 18 of 22 field goals last year for the Baylor Bears, including 3 of 4 from 50 plus yards. He made a game-winning 53-yard field goal in a win over Kansas State with 31 seconds left. So he's got somebody with some range as a kicker, and he's made some clutch kicks because he made another game winner earlier in the season, and that's much needed for Ohio State because they have not had a kicker make a field goal from 50 or more yards since Blake Haubill at Northwestern in 2019.
Question. Why does a guy why does a guy leave Baylor to come kick for Ohio State? One, it's Ohio State. You can play for a national title. Baylor's not doing that, so that's an obvious thing. And then two is money. I mean, you wouldn't think they'd pay kickers that much, but I mean, when you look at what happened this year, unfortunately for Jaden Fielding, and the what stands out the most, of course, is the Indiana game, the Big Ten championship, missing that 27-yarder. I mean, Ohio State could be playing for the national title. Um, so I'm sure he's getting money to come. I was just curious, like it's a kicker. In the NFL
Yeah.
guys will tell you, the defensive guys will tell you, it's a kicker. Come on, man. Is that even a football player? And I think that's a little harsh. You need good kickers, and kickers are very important to the team. So why does he come? Well, he wants to win a national title, and he's getting paid.
Yeah.
For those out there wondering, why would a guy leave Baylor when he's had a really good year, and come to Ohio State, which is cold and tougher, you would think tougher kicking conditions.
Yeah, he's a Texas guy too.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I mean, you're not going to deal with the cold that long at Ohio State. I mean, it gets cold in November a little bit, but the playoff games are in warm weather places.
And if you're going to play in the NFL, you better learn to kick in the cold and the wind. So
I think that was a good addition for them because they have not maximized that position. I think Jaden Fielding's career certainly did not end on a positive note with the missed chip shot against Indiana and the two misses against Michigan. But I think he did have his moments between them, and he was perfect from within 50 in the playoff run the previous year. But they just have, I think they've missed out on not having a kicker who has the 50 plus yard range. Fielding never made a kick from that long. Noah Ruggles missed a 50-yarder way wide left against the Peach Bowl. And I think you look at the way college football is nowadays with the new clock rules, the game is slower, and you get into a playoff situation where the possessions are fewer. I think it makes some of the game management stuff more important, and that includes special teams, and that includes kicking. Because even this wasn't a clutch kick for Ohio State, but they put Fielding out for a 49-yard field goal at the end of the first half against Miami, and that's just out of his range, and he misses it. I mean, that's in a game with fewer possessions, that's an opportunity to kind of steal some points there at the end of the half. I think that's just something they've needed to get more of from
yeah,
and it's Ohio State being the Ohio State kicker is a weird job because you never have to make a clutch kick for like 3 months because you're only kicking in like 4-point blowouts. Like you're going to send out a kicker in the third quarter of a game against Purdue to extend your lead from 28 points to 31 points, and then you get sent out there in the postseason. Hey, make this kick in a high pressure situation, and if you don't, you will receive death threats. It's just such a weird variance of a kicker rule where you never really have to make a pressure pack kick until you really have to make a pressure pack kick. So it goes from like a 3 to a 9 really fast.
That's a great point. I don't know if this is a knock on Ryan Day and his staff, but there's no question that at least with the media, when he's talking to us, special teams are not emphasized like they were under Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer was, I put my guys on special. I mean, it was like that's the most important unit on the whole team was special teams. And it feels like at times that special teams are just sort of an afterthought. I know that's not true and fair, but Ryan Day is like an X's and O's offense guy, and he'd just prefer never to have to kick a field goal. Let's just go down and score. Let's 7 points, 7 points, 7 points. They don't even have a special teams coach specifically anymore. I just wonder, like, the emphasis. So I think bringing in this Baylor guy does show that what you're saying. They know that the game has changed with fewer plays, and the field goal kicker is more important and vital than maybe they've thought in the past. That's just me spitballing on this.
Well, he's talked about their slower tempo in recent years, and the thing he always comes back to is you got to be efficient, and you need to
Right.
do that. And I think that's a kicker is part of that equation is because each wasted possession I think magnifies more in college football in 2025 or 2026 than it did when he first got this job in 2019. Where in that decade there was the tempo craze, people were pushing the pace. It's a slower game now, and I think that makes it even more valuable to get. Because you think about Ohio State in the second half against Indiana, they had what, 4 drives? I mean, they just you just don't see teams getting a lot of bites at the apple, and it was big. They, I think, ultimately got him where, and earlier in his tenure, it felt like they mostly reserved their field goal kicker for somebody who could just be efficient from inside 35. And granted, they couldn't always do that in recent years, but I think having the range is going to be valuable. You're going to be playing more playoff games because that's the other thing too. Not only the pace of the game is tightened, but you're going to have to win more matchup games, more one-score games, and big way you come out on top of those is having a reliable kicker. And one nice thing about this edition for Ohio State is Connor Hawkins is only a redshirt freshman for Baylor last year, so he has 3 years of eligibility left. So he could be a kicker for several years down the line here if this works out for both parties.
Yeah, that was, again, I think we agree that might be probably the most important pickup.
Well, I would say
Yeah.
it's sort of almost tongue in cheek, most important pickup, but they didn't have a kicker on the roster, so you needed to address that.
Yeah.
They needed to upgrade, but I mean, that wasn't the only position of need. I think probably the biggest upgrade on paper in terms of ranking was the Alabama defensive tackle, James Smith, who was ranked as the top interior defensive lineman available in the portal, according to 247 Sports, number 8 overall prospect. So a player who was very productive for Alabama at a full year as a starter last year. And Ohio State needs to replace its 2 interior defensive linemen in Caden McDonald and Taiwan Malone, who are both leaving. Malone was out of eligibility. McDonald forwent his final year of eligibility. So they needed bodies at tackle, and they got the best option they could have gotten in Smith, and sort of a package deal too with Quay Russaw as well, the other Alabama transfer, a linebacker who plays sort of as an edge defender as well. But Smith, I think, is probably there. If I were to do a ranking right now of which is the best, just in terms of overall talent, I think he would still, I think, I'd give him the edge over kicker.
Give me 30 seconds on area of need now on defense entering 2026. I'm curious about the line.
Or you mean just what you're
Well, yeah, I'm curious about the linebacker play. Who's back, and it's a little bit of an unknown. I mean, you're losing some studs there, right? And
yeah, because you're
probably
losing
2 first rounders.
two
Two,
high first rounders because with Dante Moore not going pro, Arvell Reese could be picked as high as second overall. And
yeah.
Sonny Styles is probably a top half of the first round as well. I mean, that was a really, really good linebacker tandem.
Who do you have coming? Pettijohn?
Yeah, Riley Peyton Pierce was sort of their third linebacker last year, and he's a really they like him. Has a high school wrestling background. Doesn't maybe have the doesn't have the height or the length of Sonny Styles or Arvell Reese, but I think just a sound player overall. Then you have Riley Pettijohn as well, and they did bring in a transfer, Christian Allegro, as a linebacker from Wisconsin, which is kind of funny. he was recruited to Wisconsin, and Luke Fickell's first year was a really fringe 3-star prospect, was from Connecticut, I believe. So really not seen as a high blue chip recruit by any means. Goes to play for Luke Fickell at Wisconsin, and then James Laurinaitis gets him as well. So you have two, I guess, former Ohio State front seven guys there in Fickell and Laurinaitis who like him. Played with
Shout out to James Laurinaitis for entering the College Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that was just yesterday.
One of the best Buckeyes. Probably underrated, even though he was in some ways the most decorated. It was just a little tangent there, a little shout out to the man, James Laurinaitis.
And now that'll be that's not a bad recruiting selling point for them
Right.
now.
But so you think they're pretty secure at linebacker? I mean,
Well, I think I do like the group they have. It's hard to say go replace Arbel Reese and Sonny Styles.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So it feels like a drop off has to be inevitable because what are the odds you're going to find two top half first round picks?
Yeah.
Probably makes it a little unfair for the next group coming out, but it doesn't look as bare at linebacker. I probably have a little more concerns about the secondary at present, mostly cornerback. Jermaine, we have not heard from Jermaine Matthews as of this time of recording about what his intention is. I think he'll probably come back. At least that's the expectation, since there hasn't been an announcement. Then you have Devin Sanchez on the opposite side, but there's not a ton of cornerback depth. Although you would think Devin Sanchez is kind of primed to have a big year, was a top 10 overall recruit in 25 when he signed with Ohio State. And then Matthews, I think, showed some stuff as well. But it's another case too in the secondary. Even though you had Terry Moore and Earl Little Jr., two transfers, you're losing Caleb Downs. And I think Davison Igbinosun also was underappreciated in his senior year. Really cut down on the pass interference penalties, and I think really held up in coverage as well. So it's a funky defense to evaluate because you lose so much to the NFL. And granted, we were having the same conversation a year ago because they lost 8 guys, but the ceiling of this wave of departures is going to be higher than it was last year, where they lost a bulk of draft picks, but Tui Molau and Sawyer and Cody Simon were Denzel Burke, those were day 2, day 3 picks. This year you're losing a lot of day 1 picks. And I think that's probably the biggest difference in terms of how you're evaluating the 25 defense or 25 departures versus 26 departures.
We haven't heard from Matt Patricia either, whether he's sticking around.
He's under contract.
By this time last year, we knew Jim Knowles was gone.
No, not quite.
No, we didn't. We didn't. That was late January. My bad.
Yeah.
I keep thinking the season that they went farther than they did this year.
Right.
Unfortunately for Buckeye Nation, they did not. Although, let's just say it now. Only 2 losses to the 2 teams playing for a national title. That's not terrible.
Don't tell that your local Ohio State fan, though.
I know.
Or at least the lunatic fringe
Yeah, right.
component of the fan base.
Right. Well, I know a lot of fans hate the transfer portal. They hate what college football has become. But you're going to have to learn to kind of, again, I don't see the genie going back in the bottle. So you're going to have to just kind of learn that to love and enjoy what it is now. It's more NFL-like. It just is. So, without the NFL talent overall, but you still have the sis boom rah tradition and bands and until actual stadium attendance starts to drop, I'm not a big believer that people are like gonna boycott college football. Thoughts?
So, and it's college football. I think the way it is now, you just don't have the resonance with maybe the same group of players, because you're getting guys who are only going to be there for a year or two. And so, just somebody like Jack Sawyer, defensive end for Ohio State, grew up in Pickerington, committed to Ohio State in 2019, Ryan Day's first year, comes in as a freshman, then makes this iconic scoop and score to send them to the national championship game. How many of those guys are just going to function within the system?
Might make jersey sales a little more challenging. What number are you going to get when the guy, is there one and done or 2 years? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's probably a lot of number fours being sold, and
Yeah, I mean,
probably some tens for saying, but
there are still I think some guys who are sort of program stalwarts. I mean, Jeremiah Smith's going to be in his third year. Brandon Innes is going to be a senior as well. You have Bo Jackson is coming back. I mean, you look at the offensive line. Carson Hinsman's been the starting center since 2023. So
what number is he?
75.
You're gonna see a lot of 75 jerseys out there. Mean Joe Green. That's for your old timers out there.
Yeah, I mean, on some level, it's football. They all wear helmets anyway. You don't get to see them. They still play the band. They still do Script Ohio, and they do hang on Sloopy, and it's a
Right. And
like
still win more than they lose.
what?
And still win a lot more than they lose.
Yeah,
Ohio's winning team, which I think is not nothing. When you look at Browns, Bengals, one of the reasons Ohio State has become even more popular than ever is people like a winner. And if you're an NFL fan in Ohio, yeah, the Bengals had a little run there, but not lately. And the Browns, I mean, enough said. So, yeah, you can like individuals, Joe Burrow or Myles Garrett, but team-wise, it's all Buckeyes. And
even the contingent among Ohio people who root for the Steelers are not having
yeah,
fun either.
right. Maybe Ryan Day brings Mike Tomlin in for as a consultant.
Yeah.
You never know. Never know. Never say never in this biz.
All right. Well,
Anyhow, that was a good wrap up. Joseph always crosses those T's, dots those I's. He's got it all. He's your beat guy for the Buckeyes. I'm just opinionated whatever. Chiming in on the issues.
we'll chime in more in the weeks ahead, especially if Ohio State adds to its early portal haul. 12 guys now, almost 30 guys they've lost. We'll do some more
But
on who they add.
they got a kicker, and for Buckeye Nation, that is the 5-star pickup that they've been hoping for.
Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Buckeye Extra Football Podcast. If you are keeping tabs on the transfer portal, where we have the latest with our tracker, so you won't miss anybody going out or coming in.
Dispatch.com.